Billy Broas on the Work and Worldview podcast.
Hey, Jonathan, great to be here. Very excited for this conversation.
Same here. I've really enjoyed your material, your book, Simple Marketing for Smart People. Shout out to Eric Marjoram, who recommended that to me. So I'm delighted that we could get together.
Same here.
So tell me a little bit about your home life growing up and the values in your home.
Yeah, so I grew up on the East Coast, born in New Jersey, raised in small town Virginia, Williamsburg, commonly known as Colonial Williamsburg. But there
Uh-huh.
are actual townies, people who live there permanently, not just tourists. And so that was me and my very large family. I have close to 40 first cousins, and most of us were living down there. So, more traditional values. Family was everything. Thanksgivings were huge there. I went to school there as well. I then went to school in James Madison University, which is in Northwestern Virginia. And then from there, really started my journey out west, and I eventually wound up where I am now in Southern California, in San Diego.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about the steps in between and obviously big family values are very, very, very strong. Was there a religious culture in your home or was it non-religious?
I'm a cradle Catholic. I mean, my family is Catholic. I wouldn't say devout Catholic by any means. So I went to a Catholic. I was baptized, went to a Catholic school until fourth grade, and then left, went to public school, and then really fell away from it and became very into science, which I saw as opposed. I don't see it this way now, but I saw it as opposed to religion, and that
Hmm.
was only emphasized when I got into college and majored in a fantastic major. I love it. It's the only college in the country that had it. It's called Integrated Science and Technology, and it was extremely rewarding for me. I really thrived in it, but it really gave me again. It polarized things even more for me. Again, in my own head, I saw this dichotomy between science and religion, and so I was doing things in college. I was very big into the into renewable energy, renewable fuels. So I was trying to figure out how to extract oil from algae. So imagine me in the laboratory looking through a microscope at this smallest visible unit of life, algae, and I really mistook that. I know this is I love that you focus on worldviews. I really mistook that for the worldview that reality is material and that these things don't really exist. They're just algae is just cells. Even humans, a human is not a thing. A human is just cells. It's just flesh and bones. So I really adopted this reductionist mindset.
So within that mindset, what are its values? What are its positive values in terms of how does it affirm itself?
Well, it allowed me to do some really cool things. I mean, we made serious advancements in the field, both in college and then I got a job in the same exact field in the same exact town in Virginia, working on cutting edge biofuels, renewable energy, and we
Hmm.
made some fantastic innovations in that field. And so it's extremely useful for that. I mean, our medicine technology comes from that reductionist approach. When you understand how things work, you can take them apart and put them back together better. The mistake I made was seeing that as the whole thing. And so I took a very anti-religious posture in college. It didn't help that this was 2007 is when I graduated. So this is when the new atheist thing was just on its rise, with Dawkins and Hitchens, Sam Harris, and all of them. I was very into like Bill Maher, and he had that documentary he put out, Religulous, and it was like just very anti-religious, and he found like the worst people to interview, right? They were not the best ambassadors for Christianity. It was very mocking, and I was like, yeah, that I'm with that. It's stupid to believe in that kind of stuff. It's just wish fulfillment was kind of my mindset around it. I feel very differently now, but that's how I was back then.
So what were some of the turning points along the way that brought you to feeling very differently now?
Well, if, I mean, one, I was just young and arrogant. I was in my 20s. I think it's just kind of natural. And then began this journey out west. I did everything right. Like I did very well in school. I got a good career and everything. But then eventually everything just started to fall apart and just really hit rock bottom. And like financially, I had a professional betrayal in there that really hurt. And I was living in LA at the time, right? So there's this big difference between small town Virginia growing up there and then LA, and I always had this entrepreneurial itch, so I like that side of it. I met other entrepreneurs, very very ambitious people, as we know, live in LA, but also a lot of sharks as well. And there's a lot of stuff that's just fake, and that I just wasn't prepared for. Coming from the small town with this big family, everyone in LA are just really in it for themselves, like with exceptions, of course, but we can definitely generalize. And then, and so like the things that I had done and that I learned just weren't working. The financially things really collapsed. Uh, my relationship collapsed, and so it's just really, kind of stripped bare. And at the same time, I've always been very intellectually curious, and I realized I didn't know what I didn't know, especially about the religious side of things. And I just had very bad arguments for my positions, and I was very aware of that too. And I just didn't understand. Like I didn't understand the Bible. I could never read it, which really frustrated me.
Mhm, mhm,
And it was kind of silly. I figured out like a big reason why is that I would always try to read it when I was traveling because I was traveling a lot, doing the digital nomad thing. And so I'd be in the hotel rooms and I pull out the Bible, start to read it, and get super frustrated because it was normally the King James Bible, which is very difficult to read. So
mhm.
what the heck? Like, why is there so much? Why do people, why are they into this? I can't even read more than a page. So if someone's listening and that's your that's your problem, get a different translation. It becomes a lot easier. So I started to go online and listen to more intellectuals talk about the Bible, people who I really respected, and realized like, oh wow, there's really more here than I thought, and kind of the dumbed down version that I knew was not the true version. I was kind of a straw man that I was attacking, and there were very smart, very intelligent people all throughout history believe in this and have very good arguments for it.
When you started to enter this turning point and you were going online, what intellectuals were you discovering or coming across that you recall?
But Joseph Campbell was a big one. He had this interview series that he did on PBS
Mhm,
about myth and the
mhm.
power of. I think it was called The Power of Myth, and it was
Hero of a
just fan
Thousand Faces? Yeah.
yeah, that was the book, and I think the PBS series had a slightly different title, but fantastic. Just learning about myth and stories and how they really are. These archetypal stories and how we see these. Yeah, like the hero with a thousand faces. We see this over and over and over again, right? So like that question of what's real? Is it just matter? Is it just things like this desk that I can knock on? Uh, or is it these other things like stories, these archetypes? And so he was a big one. I came across a series on Genesis, which I never understood by Jordan Peterson, who really broke it down in an intellectual way. Again, more from I mean, he's not Christian, more from the psychological standpoint. But again, it wasn't everything I'd been exposed to before was more so mocking. Like it dismissed it before it interpreted it, where he was
Mhm,
very open to it and said, okay, well,
mhm,
like there's a reason why this has stuck around for 2,000 years.
mhm.
Because there's a lot of other things that have fallen by the wayside that we've forgotten. So why is this so enduring? So that really opened my mind to it. And I started to see, and one thing I've always been had a knack for is pattern recognition. And so like it wasn't like the typical like charismatic, big emotional conversion story. It was more so like, okay, I see the patterns now. And like, it's the kind of thing that once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Going back to Joseph Campbell for a second, so that could have taken you almost anywhere. I mean, he based his work off the Golden Bough, and which was a sort of uh, anthropological study of myth, magic, belief across many different cultures, right? So it's interesting to me that it led you to the Bible. Can you just trace the connection there a little bit?
Well, it was just very different for one than the material I had normally dug into. For me, it was all
Uh-huh.
science up until that point. So it was
Hmm.
biology, it was physics, it was chemistry, it was technology, and then the business side of things that I was really into.
Hmm.
But I was never much into storytelling into myth. And so seeing those, it was the patterns that he talked about, like the hero's journey,
Hmm.
and these ideas of values, like transcendent values. It's like
Hmm.
he tells this one story. It's like why you have some soldiers and the helicopter goes down and you have one soldier who could save himself but he goes back to save his buddy. Why does he do that? Right, that's not what you would expect from like Darwinian evolution, right? It's because you have these higher virtues like duty, like honor, like loyalty. So it got me thinking along those lines, which got me more into probably the author that has had the biggest influence on me, which is C.S. Lewis, who talks a
Hmm.
lot about these things, right? These transcendent values in his books, like The Abolition of Man, like Miracles. So that was the Joseph Campbell just kind of opened the door. I didn't spend a lot of time there, but he opened the door, and then I never walked back through it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Fantastic. So then was there a point where you kind of definitively said, okay, I, I'm down with this belief thing. I'm going to follow, I'm going to follow this.
Yeah, and then I started to notice the patterns. So I started to see these patterns. Like for me, it was very again, it wasn't exactly emotional, and the arguments were there too. I started to study the apologetics.
Hmm.
People like C.S. Lewis, like John Lennox, who is a British mathematician and a Christian, and writes a lot about. He was a big influence in clearing up for me that science and religion can coexist and actually nest very nicely together. I love John
Hmm.
Lennox.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Green, the host of Work and Worldview. I hope you're enjoying these episodes. If you've subscribed already, I want to thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It helps. Thanks.
But then in my own story, I'm going through this, and then it was like it was right during COVID. It was 2020, and just kind of just like at a low point. It was one night I got a call from a family member who was going through a hard time. It was kind of leaning on me, and I didn't have any more weight to bear. It was like it was almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, and I was like, this just really sucks. I just can't take on any more burden. And so I was broke. Relationship had ended, a couple years, long relationship, a couple years prior. It's the middle of COVID. I'm living in San Diego by this point. Everything's closed, all the bars and everything. I'm like, well, one, how am I going to meet anybody? Because I'm, getting into my mid 30s by now. So like, bachelor days were behind me. I was ready to settle down, start a family, but really feeling alone and isolated. And I talked to this older mentor of mine who had, been through a lot in his life and kind of gave me tough love. And he was like, man up. You don't need to have a lot of money. Parks are free and there's dating apps, right? Bars are closed, but there's dating apps. Yeah, if you don't have any money, take a girl to the park. So that helped. So I hopped on the dating apps and went on a few days that didn't go anywhere. But then the next person I met became my wife.
All right. Wow. That's a
So
very
so
compressed story. The next person I met became my wife. You
yeah, it
want to
was 2
unpack that
dates,
one a
and
little
then
bit?
I think her and I went on 5 dates within 7 days, within a week, and then 9 months after that we got engaged. 9 months after that we got married. 9 months after that we had our son. And
Wow.
she had a daughter when we met, so, now I have a daughter,
Yeah.
and she's fantastic. And so
Congratulations.
again, it was like but, and I didn't know it's not like I was putting together the pieces as I was going through all this, right? Like, it was very messy. I can only connect the dots looking backwards, to use that Steve
Hmm.
Jobs quote.
Hmm.
It's just like survival mode at the time.
Hmm.
But, in the same so there was like that, like that night I was talking about and where I got that phone call from the family member. But then, and then that talk with that guy, and then the same month is when I met Laura, my wife, and then the other thing that happened on the professional side was I mentioned a professional betrayal, like lost a lot of money in that, and then I was also going to work for this person as well. So I was going to leave marketing. I was really fed up with marketing, just not really into it anymore. I was, doing marketing consulting. I've been in for a while, had some good success, but just kind of over it. And but then that door closed, and so I had to pay the bills, and that was all that I had was marketing. And so that's when a client of mine who has a very big audience gave me an opportunity to launch a course, a program to his audience because I was his behind the scenes marketing guy. And that's when so I sat down and it was like it was a lot of pressure because he has a big audience. We had a lot of people sign up for it, and then that's when I created this messaging framework, the five light bulbs. And that and all that happened within like just a couple weeks, right? All in the same month. Meeting Laura, having that the idea for the five light bulbs, which then became my vocation, and that was about 6 years ago,
Hmm.
and that led me to where I am now, and now I'm more fulfilled than ever in my work in marketing, and things are working better than ever. So again, I can only connect these dots looking backwards. I'm trying to piece together like, okay, how did I form this worldview? It's like, well, I almost laugh at it. I'm like, my story's so cliche. It's like, of course, like you hit rock bottom, talk to the wise mentor, right? And then things rebounded from there. But again, I think, things are cliche for a reason. It's because they're true, right?
Yeah.
It's like what's more real than that?
Yeah. Yeah. COVID was definitely like the inmost cave for a lot of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
for, for sure. So, values wise, so what are some values you embrace today in your work and business as you go about doing what you do, and in what ways do you critique or challenge the industry that you're in?
Yeah, well, and coming back to how I changed my worldview. I see it again. I recognize patterns and structures and things, and it really showed me what's real. Like I see these patterns. I see how the world works, and Christianity gave me. I eased back into it because I wasn't quite ready to jump, fully back into the deep end of it.
Hmm.
But I took these steps and started to see that okay, like there is a structure to reality here, and this offers the best explanation of it. And then I started to learn about these things I hadn't learned about before, like ontology, like epistemology, these fields of philosophy that I was not exposed to because I was such a science guy growing up. But then, and that's been one pattern. And speaking of patterns in my life is going between these different fields. Like I went from energy, I was in that energy industry. I was into beer brewing for a while, and then into marketing. And then in marketing, I said, well, there's all these incredible teachings and learning lessons from these other fields, like philosophy primarily, and
Hmm.
and and so many people in marketing are wrestling with these issues that like there are answers to, or there's at least better questions than the ones that we're asking. And so a huge problem people have with sales and marketing is it's icky, it's manipulative, it's whatever, fill in the blank, right? Like people have a lot of qualms around that. And I wrestled that with, with myself and with clients too. That's often the big thing holding them back. It's not the fact that they don't have the best marketing strategy, but it's that they feel weird and slimy about selling. And for a while, that's how I felt too. But it felt very surface level. It's like, okay, it's icky, but what do? We just try to balance it, right? Don't cross the line from persuasion into manipulation. But then, once I started studying these other topics, I realized like these hold the answers, and it was largely the field of philosophy. And so now, like the way I look at it is, okay, well, like my marketing approach, like the thing that I share now, like I mentioned the five light bulbs, that is like the practical tool that we use to write emails and sales pages and things like that. But upstream of that is a fundamental assumption, and here's the ontology. The assumption is that we are speaking to human beings, and human beings are born with inherent dignity. And if you take that assumption into it, that axiom, then a lot of the stuff downstream really sorts itself out. Because a lot of the almost all of the marketing advice you see nowadays does not assume that. What I discovered was, studying history is that so the field of psychology branched off from philosophy about 150 years ago. Like I wasn't aware of that. And most of the marketing advice that we see comes from this field of psychology and behavioral economics, and more so nowadays, neuroscience.
Hmm.
And that's the reason a lot of this stuff feels off. It's, you hear advice like this, like leverage cognitive biases, use scarcity, use the loss aversion effect.
Hmm.
You want to spike their dopamine. It's like,
Hmm.
does that assume human dignity? No, it assumes that people are machines to be programmed. It
Hmm.
assumes that they're rats in a lab.
Hmm.
It assumes
Hmm.
that they're Pavlov's dog.
Hmm.
Right. And so and that gets into C.S. Lewis, and he has, he talks about in his book Miracles, his argument from reason, and how there are different ways that belief is built. And one way is kind of like the Pavlov's dog way, where you're conditioned. The other way is through genuine human reasoning and insight. And so I read that and said, oh well, that first example, Pavlov's dog, that's what everyone's doing with marketing.
Hmm.
They're just trying to press these primordial hot buttons, but there's a better way of approaching it. We can assume that people are lab rats. That's that fundamental axiom. And if you assume that, then you're perfectly reasoned in treating people like that. It all follows. But there's a gap there. Like just we don't have to treat people like that because yeah, we like, we do follow our baser instincts, but we also painted the Mona Lisa and we went to the moon. I mean, we all like we're pretty incredible. And so if we treat people like they're incredible, we treat them with dignity, it influences how we communicate with them. And so what I preach is not the psychology hacking, but rather building arguments and appealing to our prospects' better nature rather than their baser instincts.
Excellent. Why don't you just for folks that maybe are not so familiar, two things. One is a review of the five light bulbs. And the second thing is maybe a few examples of the types of arguments that you feel are hitting the mark today that you would use.
So the five light bulbs, real quick. It's a messaging framework, and so light bulb one represents where your customer is now. We call this their status quo, and
Hmm.
so this is where you empathize with them. It's language around the problem that they're dealing with. Light bulb two represents the other options available to them to try to solve that problem. You might think about these as your competitors, even if they're not direct competitors. Things that your potential customer or client is considering. Light bulb three represents your approach to solving the problem, not your product just yet, but your approach. Light bulb four is your product or your service, which is really just a vehicle for your way of doing things. Your light bulb three, and light bulb five is that other side of the bridge. It's the opposite of the light bulb one. It's what they're looking for. It's their desired outcome, as we say.
Mm, got it. Can you expand upon the approach, the middle one, a little bit?
Yeah, and that's really the key one. So I mean, to get meta for a second, the five light bulbs framework is my approach to solving the problem. So I have different programs and services, like consulting services, that use the five light bulbs, but the five light bulbs is not my product. So if you're in my business, like consulting, it might be your methodology. A lot of consultants have their framework or their
Hmm.
methodology.
Hmm.
Uh, if you are in something like physical products, let's say you're making clothing, it might be the technology and the fabric that you use.
Okay.
It might be if you make basketball shoes, whatever makes the shoes or the person jump higher, right? So
Okay.
it's not the product. The product is the price, the guarantee, refund
Hmm.
policy, and all that.
Hmm.
It's the approach. It's the way of doing things. You know you're doing light bulb three correctly when it can apply to multiple different types of offers. So again, in my field in consulting, coaching, we'll often have one-on-one services that we provide. It might be online courses and it might be books. All those can have that same light bulb three in them. So one light bulb three applies to many light bulb fours.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. And then arguments. So some arguments that are representative of the approach that you take. How would you characterize those?
Well, there's a unique argument for every different business, and that's really what I do. Even before getting to the five light bulbs, when I work with a client, is help them figure out their argument. And again, this was the big aha for me, and I couldn't believe that no one in marketing was talking about this. But again, the fish that is born into water doesn't know it's in water, right? So
Hmm.
like I heard like copywriters and marketers would use terms like the term claim, CLAIM. It's like okay, but that doesn't come from psychology, and that's not even a writing thing. That's a tool of philosophy. So there's this the first thing we do with clients is create, and it's such a wacky term I didn't know a few years ago, a syllogism. And your listeners, they might know this. If they don't, they might know it by its structure. You have a major premise, a minor premise, and then a conclusion. So all men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Right? That's deductive reasoning. That's a syllogism. And that is a phenomenal tool for marketing, lo and behold, right? Because I see marketing as an argument. Like you're putting forth a case, like a lawyer would put forth a case in a courtroom. So like people have tried to distill marketing messages before, but they always turn into like cheesy taglines and elevator pitches. They're slogans. I'm much more of a probably from the energy industry, right? I'm much more of a technical thinker than that.
Hmm.
And the syllogism is that technical answer. So you can have a very short syllogism that's the distilled version of your message that then expands into your sales pages, your emails, your website, whatever it is. But when you do it this way and create that syllogism, aka argument up front, then you have the confidence in knowing that all those marketing assets are aligned.
Hmm. Hmm. And you shepherd people through that in your coaching and consulting?
And we usually start with a diagnostic and say, okay, well, what is your current argument? Is it a valid argument? Does everything line up logically? Is it
Hmm.
compelling in the way that you're saying it? Because you can communicate an argument in different ways. You can use data, you can use storytelling. We
Hmm.
just diagnose it with that, and then a select number of people decide to work with me to help them fill those gaps and flesh out that argument.
Hmm. So when people come to you, obviously with a different set of values because they need help, they're coming to you with something off, right? What's some of the most common, if we look at you as the analogy of a doctor, right?
Mhm.
Uh, what are what are your most common sick patients?
Yeah, I mean, it's really what my problem was when I first started in marketing, which is I was so just overwhelmed by all of it. And I was really turned off again, coming from the energy industry into marketing. I was like, this is just like, there's no rhyme or reason to this. It's just
Hmm.
noise.
Hmm.
But then I figured out that, most people get overwhelmed by one of two categories or both. There's channels and tactics. So
Hmm.
channels, I have a lot of people asking me questions like, should I be on LinkedIn? Should I be in TikTok, etc. Or it's related to tactics. Should I use hashtags? Should I do a viral giveaway? Things like that. And I would
Hmm.
see people that would really do a great job with their channels and tactics and do everything that they're supposed to do, building sales funnels or whatever it is. And there was no argument in there. There was not strong messaging.
Hmm.
So I have this metaphor I use, the river metaphor, the upstream downstream metaphor. So
Hmm.
downstream you have your, this is from the book from Simple Marketing for Smart People. You have your tactics and channels, but then upstream you have your core marketing message. And unless you get that core message really dialed in, it doesn't really matter what tactics and channels you use.
So, what are you working on now? What's your primary focus at this point?
I mean, what interests me most is blending all these fields, bringing philosophy. I really see what I'm doing as applied philosophy. And no,
Hmm.
because again, it kind of boggles my mind that no one's applied this to marketing before. And it just holds so much promise, both for, what people generally want, which is getting results, making more money, having better clients and clients who stick with them. But also the ethical side as well, which I'm very grateful that that's been resonating with people. Like what I mentioned to you, that idea of, as I say, connecting our practices to our promises and starting with that fundamental axiom that humans are born with an inherent dignity, that's really been resonating with people. So that's where my focus is right now.
Hmm. Hmm. Inherent dignity imbued to them by God, right? Made in His image.
Well, that's my grounding for it. Yeah, that's the question is how do you arrive at that axiom? And there are different paths to it, which is a great thing. We can really build a coalition around that. Yeah, for me and for you too, it's that imago Dei and born in the image of God, therefore humans are sacred. But there are secular paths to that as well. Kant, Immanuel Kant, he had his path to that which was largely secular. But it's that's the jumping off point. And then from there we can ask the question, okay, well, what works? A more utility focused question. What works for getting results? But it has to be nested within this prior frame.
Hmm. Hmm. Excellent. Excellent. Billy, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. It's been great to learn directly from you about some of these beautiful principles that you've distilled from life and from your practice.
Yeah, it's been a fun conversation. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm newer to talking about these things. Normally it's all marketing stuff. So I love, and although we talked about marketing, this was perfect. Yeah, because we got to blend the worldview with it, and I think that is the way forward for so many of
Yeah.
us.
Awesome. For those who wish to reach you, what are the best ways to reach you?
So I'm most active on LinkedIn if we're talking social media. So
Hmm.
please reach out on there
Okay.
if you want to learn more about my worldview, especially around business and marketing. Best place to start is the book "Simple Marketing for Smart People."
Hmm. Okay. Great. And do you have any other books that you recommend for anyone?
Well, I'm going to recommend a chapter, and I hit on it earlier, and it's from C.S. Lewis's book Miracles. It's chapter 3 of Miracles is what I'm going to recommend, and that's where he puts forth his argument from reason. And if you can understand that, and it took me a few readings and some help with ChatGPT to really understand it because it's dense
Hmm.
philosophically. But if you can understand that, it's going to really open your mind, especially when it comes to these topics like communication and marketing and objective value.
Awesome. Well, Billy, thanks again.
Thanks, Jonathan. It was fun.
Yes.